At his grandfather's funeral, Billionaire spots ex-wife arriving with twins, holding a hidden will. Shadows fell long across the manor grounds as Alexander Caldwell stepped out of his limousine. Tension coiled in the pit of his stomach, not merely because he was about to bury his beloved grandfather, Harvey Caldwell, but because he suspected secrets would unravel in the wake of loss. He was the only heir, so everyone believed, of one of the country's wealthiest families. Yet the hush that spread through those gathered around the coffin hinted at brewing storms. Among the black-clad mourners, his gaze froze on a figure he never expected to see, Emily, his ex-wife. At her side stood two children, twins he had never met before. Little did he know they carried not just heartbreak and old memories in their eyes, but a hidden will that could shatter everything. A crisp autumn wind whipped across the gravesite, fluttering the edges of black coats and formal dresses. The late Harvey Caldwell's funeral was a subdued affair. In terms of decor, no flamboyant floral arches or gaudy displays of wealth. Harvey had specified a modest ceremony, believing that life's final moment should be marked with dignity, not extravagance. Alexander Caldwell stood at the forefront, his gloved hands clasped. His emotions were in tumult, torn between profound grief and a strange unease. He was close to his grandfather. Harvey had raised him like a son after Alexander's parents died in a plane crash. Yet, for all his closeness, he sensed invisible fissures in the family's foundation. The few relatives present, cousins and second cousins, shared half-hearted pleasantries, their smiles not reaching their eyes. He heard subdued murmurs about him. That's Alexander Caldwell, the tech billionaire. Yes, that was him. At only 32, his shrewd investments had propelled him into the public spotlight. He recalled that last phone conversation with Harvey only a week before. "Be careful who you trust, my boy," his grandfather had warned. "Especially when I'm gone," the words echoed in Alexander's mind. And then his ex-wife, Emily, appeared with two children in tow twins, no older than 10. Alexander's heart twisted. Why here? Why now? The colour drained from Alexander's face. Emily Donovan, formerly Caldwell, had vanished from his life 3 years earlier. Their divorce had been swift, unceremonious, and gut-wrenching. They once shared a deep love, forged over late-night drives and philanthropic events. People had called them the golden couple, but beneath the golden sheen, insecurities and allegations brewed. They parted ways in a maelstrom of misunderstanding. Yet here she stood, heartbreakingly beautiful, in a fitted black dress. Her eyes, a piercing green, glistened not only with tears, but also with the heaviness of a secret. The two children beside her were a boy and a girl, their hair the same chestnut brown as Alexander's. Their presence dropped a lead weight on his chest, an unspoken question pounding in his mind. Were they his? Emily, he managed, clearing his throat as the funeral guests milled around, whispering. "One didn't expect to see you." Her lips pressed into a tight smile, sadness flickering in her gaze. "I wouldn't miss paying my respects to Harvey," she said, casting her eyes to the coffin. "He meant a great deal to me once." The tension between them crackled like a live wire. Alexander introduced himself to the twins politely, uncertain if it was even his place to do so. The entire funeral seemed to shrink, everyone else receding into the background of this one moment. As the eulogy began, Alexander couldn't focus on the minister's solemn words. His attention kept darting to Emily and the children. He noticed the boy's features, the slight dimple in his left cheek, the arch of his eyebrows, both reflected strongly in the old Caldwell family portraits that hung in the manor's main hall. It was like looking into a mirror of his own childhood. The girl, similarly, possessed the same thick eyelashes that had been a distinctive trait passed down through generations. No one seemed surprised by Emily's arrival. In fact, a handful of extended relatives turned their heads toward her as if anticipating something. A cousin, Felicity Caldwell, narrowed her eyes, mouth twitching with displeasure. Had they known about these twins? When the casket finally lowered into the earth, a raw grief seized Alexander's chest. He remembered how his grandfather had guided him through his first major business negotiation, how they had visited the Caldwell wineries in Bordeaux, how Harvey's gentle wisdom had shaped him into the man he was. The finality of the coffin descending felt like a door closing on a chapter of his life. But as the priest uttered the final blessings, he realized another door was opening, a tumultuous one that involved Emily, two mysterious children, and a hidden inheritance that threatened to rewrite everything. After the burial, the guests reconvened in Caldwell Manor's grand reception hall. Tall windows overlooked manicured gardens, and the vaulted ceilings bore the painted legacy of 18th-century artisans. A subdued hush replaced what would normally be vibrant chatter in such a luxurious setting. Today was a day of mourning, laced with quiet speculation. Waiters moved gracefully among the mourners, offering refreshment, sparkling water, wine from the Caldwell vineyards, and small plates of hors d'oeuvre. Alexander sipped a single glass of wine, too shaken to enjoy the taste. He hovered near the large portrait of his grandfather that stood front and center, a memorial of sorts for the day. Relatives came by to murmur condolences. Older aunts patted his shoulder, cautioning him to rest. Cousins tried to glean any hint of the estate's distribution. Almost everyone shot curious glances at Emily, standing in a corner with the twins. She, too, was receiving hushed remarks, none of which she seemed to return. Alexander approached her, heart pounding. "We should talk," he said, voice husky with emotion. Emily glanced at the twins, Aria and Jonah. She introduced them quietly and nodded. They retreated to an antechamber off the main hall, a smaller library filled with leather-bound volumes. Here, out of earshot, they could finally speak truths that had long been buried. Standing amid towering mahogany shelves, the scent of old books and furniture polish enveloped them. Alexander closed the door behind him. Emily held the twins' hands protectively. The children looked both curious and wary, as if sensing the tension that smoldered between the adults. "Emily," Alexander began, voice quivering slightly. "Are they mine?" There it was, the question that had battered his heart from the moment he saw them. Emily inhaled a shaky breath. "Jonah and Aria are 10 years old." Her eyes flickered with a sorrow that Alexander didn't entirely understand. "We divorced 3 years ago, yes, but they were born during our marriage. I never told you because what?" He tried to keep his voice calm, but anger, confusion, and a sense of betrayal wove through him. "Because your grandfather warned me," he told me, "if I ever mentioned the twins or tried to drag you into fatherhood, I would jeopardize your future and theirs. He said you had a destiny to fulfill." Alexander's eyes widened in disbelief. "My grandfather? Harvey? He adored you. Why would he do that?" She swallowed, tears brimming. "He was kind to me, but he also was fiercely protective of you. He said that revealing my pregnancy at the time could ruin your acquisitions, your business expansions, that it was a precarious moment and you couldn't be distracted." The silence in the library was almost suffocating. Jonah and Aria stood there, silently clutching each other's hands as if they were used to leaning on each other when the adult world proved chaotic. Alexander felt a swirl of conflicting emotions, heartbreak at missing a decade of their lives, resentment toward his grandfather, confusion about why Harvey had orchestrated such secrecy. He stared at Emily, remembering the countless nights they'd spent dreaming up a future together. "Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me yourself?" She blinked back tears. "I tried, but every time I reached out through phone calls, letters, your staff stonewalled me. You had changed your number. Your personal assistant claimed you were traveling constantly, too busy to deal with past baggage." Her voice trembled, Then I received a letter with your grandfather's seal, containing a large sum of money and a note that said you wished to sever all ties. I couldn't bear to fight the entire Caldwell empire. Alexander's hand balled into a fist. I never wrote or authorized any letter. My grandfather, God, how could he do this? A weight pressed on Alexander's chest. Love for Harvey collided with searing betrayal. Why come now? He asked, voice nearly breaking. Emily hesitated, reaching into her purse. Because I have something Harvey left with us this. She pulled out a folded document, edges yellowed and sealed with the Caldwell signet. It's his hidden will. Alexander stared at the ancient-looking paper, the wax seal cracked with age. A hush seemed to descend over the library. His eyes flickered from Emily to the document, back to Emily, and finally to the twins. "Where did you get this?" he asked, swallowing hard. Emily exhaled a breath she seemed to have been holding for years. "It arrived in a safe deposit box that Harvey set up under my name. I only got access after his death. A trustee from his law firm, Garrick and Bell, reached out to me 2 days ago with instructions. I didn't know if it was real or some cruel joke, but the handwriting is definitely Harvey's." Alexander's mind reeled. Garrick and Bell was the family's long-time legal counsel. If they had been involved, then this had Harvey Caldwell's fingerprints all over it. Why would he bypass me and the rest of the family? Emily squared her shoulders, though her eyes betrayed lingering fear. "Because, from what I understand, this will change everything. It names me and the twins as significant heirs, possibly even principal inheritors of a portion of the Caldwell fortune. And there's more. Harvey apologized in a letter for separating us, for the manipulations." The twins remained silent, but their eyes shone with that innocence only children possess. Alexander's heart twisted. If this was all true, it meant that Harvey had orchestrated an elaborate plan, one that would now pit the Caldwell family against Emily and the children. He needed time to process, but in a setting as tense as a funeral reception, time was a luxury. Guilt gnawed at him. He remembered how he had felt so bitter at Emily's sudden departure, certain that she'd abandoned their marriage for superficial reasons, greed, or restlessness in his shadow. Never had he suspected the invisible hand of his grandfather guiding the entire tragedy. A subdued knock at the library door startled them. Felicity Caldwell, Alexander's older cousin, entered, her head cocked suspiciously. "Alex, dear, are you all right? The guests are beginning to leave, and some are curious." Her gaze fell on Emily and the twins. "Emily," she acknowledged coldly, her eyes narrowing at the sight of the document in Emily's hand. "What's that?" Alexander tensed. He wanted to shield Emily and the twins from Felicity's prying. Felicity was known for her manipulative streak. She'd do anything to gain advantage in the family. "It's just some private letters from grandfather." Alexander lied smoothly. "We're sorting through them." Felicity offered a thin-lipped smile. "I see. Well, do remember the official reading of the will is scheduled in 2 days at Garrick and Bell's offices. The rest of the family will be there. I trust you'll attend, Miss Donovan." There was a warning in her tone. As Felicity left, Alexander knew they were on borrowed time. The Caldwell machine was massive, well-connected, and prepared to defend the legacy. By dusk, the funeral reception winded down. Mourners drifted away, carrying leftover sorrow and unanswered questions. Alexander invited Emily and the twins to stay at Caldwell Manor that night, partly to protect them from prying eyes, partly because he needed to talk more with Emily. The revelation that the children were his left him shaken to the core. He stood by the window of his childhood bedroom, looking out at the moonlit gardens where he once played. Emily sat on a settee nearby, watching him carefully. The twins had been put to bed in the adjacent guest suite. Alexander ran a hand through his hair. "Why didn't Harvey want me to know about them? That letter he wrote to you, did it explain his reasons?" Emily nodded. He wrote that he feared the Caldwell name would attract dangerous attention. He wanted to protect the children from kidnappings, media scrutiny, gold diggers, everything that could come with your growing empire. Alexander snorted, bitterness lacing his tone. He was so cautious that he manipulated every aspect of my life. I can't believe he thought isolating me from my own children was acceptable. Emily wiped away a stray tear. I never forgave him or you for what happened. But after reading his full letter, I realized there was more to it. He believed you were in danger from within your family, especially from those who coveted the Caldwell empire. He feared the twins would be used as leverage against you. The hush of the manor at night felt almost claustrophobic. The chandeliers dimmed, the corridors cast long shadows on the polished floors. Sleep felt impossible, so Alexander paced the hallway, Emily following. He believed someone from inside the family might harm me or the kids, Alexander murmured. A swirl of memories surfaced. The cut brake lines on his car a year ago, thought to be vandalism. The suspicious business sabotage attempts he had quietly dealt with. Was it possible a family member was behind these? Emily nodded gravely. He suspected Felicity or someone aligned with her. He mentioned deals with certain unscrupulous parties, possibly mafia-linked investors. He was investigating it quietly. I think that's why he didn't want the children known until he had enough proof to confront the threat. Alexander rubbed his temples. This is insane. But it also explains why Felicity's been so eager to handle the family finances. Grandfather must have stashed away a fortune in separate accounts. She's probably counting on controlling them once the official will is read. Emily placed a hand gently on his arm. We have the hidden will. And if we take it to Garrick and Bell, we might be able to change the entire direction of the estate distribution and protect the children. He exhaled, a tremor in his breath. Then we must, before Felicity or anyone else tries to destroy it. Early the next morning, Alexander found himself in the manor's sunny breakfast room, an impressive space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the rose garden. For the first time in his life, he wasn't alone at the table. Across from him sat Arya and Jonah, nibbling on toast and jam with wide eyes, as if unsure how to behave in such opulence. He forced a smile, nerves dancing in his stomach. "So, do you both like sports or reading?" he fumbled, feeling like a stranger in his own fatherly role. Arya shrugged shyly. "I like painting. Mom says I have a good eye for color." Jonah glanced at his sister, adding in a low mumble, "I like building things. Legos mostly." Alexander's heart warmed. "Well, the Caldwell estate is big," he said gently, "if you want to explore, and we have an art studio in the eastern wing if you want to paint." The children perked up a bit. Emily watched them with a protective gaze, but Alexander also sensed a flicker of relief. He felt a pang of guilt for all the birthdays, holidays, and simple everyday moments he had missed. He was determined to make amends, no matter how complicated things were about to become. Before they finished breakfast, a call came from Garrick and Bell's head attorney, Martin Garrick. "We need to talk," was all he said. That afternoon, Alexander drove with Emily and the twins to Garrick and Bell in downtown Chicago. The building, a towering edifice of steel and glass, reminded him of how enmeshed the Caldwell legacy was in the city's business world. In the reception area, a smartly dressed paralegal ushered them into a wood-paneled conference room lined with heavy leather chairs. Martin Garrick, a tall, graying man with a precise manner, greeted them politely. A slight tension in his features suggested he was bracing for turbulence. "My condolences on your loss," he said, nodding to Alexander. "Your grandfather was a legend in this firm." He turned to Emily. "Miss Donovan, thank you for coming. Your presence was expected." Alexander exchanged a look with Emily. "Expected?" Garrick cleared his throat. Harvey Caldwell left specific instructions regarding a second document, a hidden will, if you will, that might or might not supersede the official one to be read in 2 days. He left it in your care, Miss Donovan, trusting you to bring it forward if you saw fit. Emily set the folded parchment on the table. Garrick pulled on a pair of reading glasses, his hands trembling slightly. He broke the seal, scanning the text. The tension in the room thickened as Garrick's face paled. "This changes everything," he murmured. "The distribution of assets, guardianship, the entire hierarchy, and it names the twins explicitly." Moments after Garrick finished reading the document, a sharp rap on the conference room door startled them. Felicity Caldwell swept in, flanked by her personal lawyer. Her sharp grey suit and steely expression radiated confidence and a whiff of antagonism. "I heard you called a special meeting," she said smoothly, taking in Emily and the twins with a single frigid glance. "Surprised I wasn't invited." Alexander's jaw tensed. It was impromptu. "Didn't realize we needed your approval." Felicity's gaze shifted to Garrick, who cleared his throat. "Miss Caldwell, please have a seat. We have new information from a secondary will that Harvey Caldwell deposited." "Secondary will?" Felicity repeated, her lips tightening. She settled gracefully into a chair. Her lawyer hovered at her elbow, expression carefully neutral. Garrick passed Felicity a copy. Her eyes darted over the lines. A flash of shock flickered across her face before she regained her composure. "This is quite a revelation," she said, "but who's to say this is authentic?" "It must be subjected to verification," Alexander glared. "Grandfather sealed it with his personal signet, left it with a top trustee. It's real, and apparently it details a portion of the Caldwell estate going to Emily and the twins." Felicity's lawyer interjected, "All well and good, but the official reading is in 2 days. We'll see what stands in court. Remember, Miss Donovan left the family years ago. Her claims are tenuous at best." Emily's eyes flashed. "We have proof that the children are Alexander's, that they are Harvey's legitimate grandchildren. The estate belongs to them as well." A fierce legal argument brewed in the conference room. Garrick tried to maintain order, but Felicity's lawyer insisted on a DNA test to prove paternity. Alexander bristled, but realized it might be the only way to formally establish the twins' rightful place in the family. Felicity pushed her advantage. "Until that's proven, these claims have no legal standing. Harvey might have been conned or coerced in his old age. The man was nearly 90. Alexander felt his blood boil. He turned to Garrick. "Arrange the DNA test as soon as possible. Let's leave no doubt. And once that's settled, we'll hear the official will reading. If the second will is legitimate, it overrides the first, correct?" Garrick nodded. "That's correct, provided we can confirm it was signed at a date later than the first. This new document is dated 3 months ago, while the one we have on file is dated a year ago. If the signatures and the signet are authenticated, this is the legally binding final testament." Emily held the twins close, whispering comforting words. Arya looked frightened, while Jonah's lips trembled, though he tried to appear brave. Alexander's heart squeezed at the sight. Felicity scoffed. What a spectacle! Harvey would be appalled to see his family reduced to this circus. Alexander shot back. "He'd be more appalled by your attempt to cut his grandchildren out of their legacy." The minute they returned to Caldwell Manor, the reality of the situation sank deeper. The house staff greeted them politely, but Alexander sensed a shift in the atmosphere. Word traveled fast. In the world of high society, secrets were currency, and rumors took flight in the blink of an eye. He gathered Emily and the twins in the sitting room. Arya and Jonah were subdued, likely overwhelmed by the day's events. The funeral, the hidden will, the confrontation. They sat on a plush sofa, wide-eyed. Alexander knelt in front of them. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "You've been thrown into chaos, and it's my family's doing. I promise I'll protect you." Jonah studied him for a long moment, as if assessing his sincerity. "Mum said you didn't know about us." he said in a quiet voice. "So, you're not mad at us?" Alexander's heart twisted. "No, of course not. I'm mad at the situation, at the lies, but never at you." He cleared his throat, struggling against the emotional lump lodged there. "I want to get to know you both, properly." Emily stood behind them, arms folded protectively. She watched him with wary eyes, but there was also a glimmer of hope. "Thank you," she whispered. They agreed on the DNA test. Alexander's personal physician and a court-approved lab would handle everything promptly. By the time the official reading occurred, they'd have the results. And with that, they hoped, the truth would be indisputable. Night settled in. Alexander found himself wandering the manor's portrait gallery. Massive oil paintings of Caldwell ancestors adorned the walls, stalwart men and elegant women, each representing a chapter in the family's centuries-long saga. Under flickering sconces, he paused by the painting of Harvey Caldwell as a young man, standing beside a vintage Rolls-Royce. There was pride in his grandfather's eyes, an echo of the bold entrepreneur he had been. He recalled the day Harvey taught him how to ride a horse on the estate's ranch, how the old man had roared with laughter when Alexander fell off and landed in the hay. Memories of birthdays, business advice, gentle reprimands, and unwavering support flooded Alexander's mind. He felt a swell of betrayal that the same man had orchestrated a monumental deception. Emily found him there, footsteps soft on the polished floor. "He truly loved you," she said gently, as if reading his thoughts. "He wrote me letters over the years, even when he prevented us from speaking. Each time, he'd ask me about you, how you were handling your success, your expansions. It seems he was terrified of losing you to the ruthless world he knew so well." Alexander's throat tightened. "I just wish he'd told me. I would have loved to be a father from the start." The next day, a lab technician arrived discreetly to collect cheek swabs from Alexander and the twins. Emily looked on with apprehension, though logically they all expected the results to confirm what they already knew. Yet the official stamp held the power to either solidify or dismantle their claims. Hours crawled by. Alexander busied himself by calling his business associates, reorganizing the schedule he had cleared for the funeral. He cancelled a meeting with potential investors in Hong Kong and postponed a charity gala in New York. This moment protecting his newly discovered family took priority. By late afternoon, the phone rang. Alexander snatched it up, tension coiling in his gut. The lab technician's voice was calm and precise. "The children share a 99.99% paternity match with you, Mr. Caldwell." Relief flooded him, followed by a surge of indignation toward anyone who might challenge these children's legitimacy. He hung up, heading straight to the parlor where Emily and the twins waited. When he told them, Aria and Jonah exchanged small, shy smiles, while Emily sighed in what looked like a mixture of triumph and sadness. "It's official," Alexander said, voice trembling. "You are my children, and no one can take that from us now." The children ran to him, awkwardly but earnestly, wrapping their arms around his waist. Emily's eyes shone with tears, and Alexander felt his own eyes burn. That evening, Alexander insisted they have a proper family dinner. He wanted to reclaim some semblance of normalcy. The chef prepared a comforting meal: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh vegetables from the estate gardens, and warm apple pie. They sat at a smaller, cozier dining table in the family wing, instead of the massive, formal dining hall that seated 30. The twins seemed more relaxed, curiosity lighting their faces as they glanced around at the tasteful decor and high ceilings. Conversation was hesitant at first, interspersed with the awkwardness of bridging a decade-long gap. Then Aria spoke up about her love of painting sunsets, how she often borrowed her mother's phone to capture reference photos. Jonah, not to be outdone, described a robot he built from scratch in a summer science camp. Alexander listened in amazement and pride. Emily chimed in with tales of their life, in a small Colorado town, how the kids grew up around mountains and pine forests, far from the hustle of Chicago high society. Alexander felt a swelling warmth in his chest, a feeling he had suppressed for so long. Despite the threat looming from Felicity and potential legal battles, this moment felt profoundly right. For the first time in years, he felt like he had a true family again. The day of the official will reading arrived. The Caldwell clan gathered in Garrick and Bell's largest conference room. An air of tension soaked through the space. Felicity, clad in an impeccable designer suit, sat with her lawyer on one side. A few other cousins, Thomas, Cynthia, and Mark, clustered behind her, exchanging whispers. They each harbored their own hopes for a slice of the Caldwell fortune. Alexander, Emily, and the twins took seats near Martin Garrick. The presence of the children caused a stir among the extended family. Some eyed them with curiosity, others with poorly masked hostility. Staff from the law firm distributed official copies of the year-old will and the newly discovered testament. Garrick began, clearing his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. We're here to finalize the estate of the late Harvey Caldwell. I will first read the primary will that was lodged with our firm 1 year ago, then address the second, more recent document discovered posthumously." A hush fell. Garrick recited the official will. Large sums allocated to various charities, certain properties bequeathed to extended family. A controlling share of Caldwell Industries was left to Alexander Caldwell, with the request that he uphold philanthropic commitments. Felicity was named trustee of certain educational funds. It all seemed straightforward until Garrick paused and lifted the second parchment. In a tense hush, Garrick read Harvey's final testament. The language was clearer, more personal. It acknowledged Emily Donovan Caldwell and her 2 children, Jonah and Aria, as rightful heirs to the Caldwell name. It granted them a significant share of Caldwell Industries stock, properties abroad, and a trust fund for the twins' education. An explicit clause stated that any family member who contested the twins' paternity or sought to undermine them would forfeit their inheritance under Caldwell's estate. Harvey's signature was bold, and his personal seal verified its authenticity. The date just 3 months prior to his passing confirmed it as his final, legally binding wish. Gasps echoed through the room. Emily's eyes welled with tears, while Jonah and Aria clutched her hands. Felicity's face tightened into a mask of barely contained fury. Her lawyer sprang up. "This is unprecedented. We demand a thorough investigation into the circumstances under which this second will was prepared." Garrick didn't flinch. "We've already verified the signet and the handwriting. Unless you have substantive proof of fraud, this will stand." Felicity looked as though she wanted to scream, but instead she forced a cold smile. "You might have your will, but I promise this isn't over." Alexander stood, placing a reassuring hand on Emily's shoulder. "Grandfather's wishes are clear. We will honor them." As the Caldwell family shuffled out of the conference room, the air bristled with tension. Cousins circled Felicity, muttering discontent. They had expected a windfall, an inheritance to maintain their lavish lifestyles. Now, a portion had been diverted to Emily and the twins, who they saw as outsiders. Cynthia Caldwell hissed, "We don't even know those kids. They could be scamming us." Thomas Caldwell added, "This is a disgrace to the Caldwell legacy." Felicity shot them both a warning glance, her eyes blazing. "We'll find a way to contest it, mark my words." Alexander overheard the exchange as he guided Emily and the twins to the elevator. Rage flared inside him, but he fought to maintain composure for the children's sake. As they waited for the doors to open, Felicity glided over. Her voice was low and menacing. "Congratulations on your newfound children, Alexander. But if you think I'll let you and your ex-wife steal everything my father built, you're mistaken." Alexander turned to face her. "Steal? Harvey made his wishes very clear, Felicity. You're ignoring the fact that he cared about these kids, his own grandchildren. You should be ashamed to call them thieves. She merely smirked. Blood ties or not, you have no idea the lengths I'll go to keep control of this fortune. The Caldwell name doesn't just belong to you, you know. Then she turned on her heel and strode away. Later that evening, a subdued triumph lingered over Caldwell Manor. Emily tucked the twins into bed, reading them a story about explorers who discovered hidden treasure. In the hallway, Alexander listened to her soft voice drifting from the room. For a moment, it sounded so normal, like a family bedtime routine. His heart clenched with gratitude and regret for the lost years. But a phone call from Garrick interrupted the moment of peace. Alexander, we received word that Felicity intends to file a motion challenging the second will on the grounds of diminished capacity. She claims Harvey was not mentally sound in his final months. Alexander's face burned with anger. He was perfectly lucid, traveling and handling business meetings until a week before his stroke. She's lying, I know, Garrick replied, but we'll have to prove it in court if she pursues this. I also have some concerning information. The firm has done some digging into Felicity's financial records. She's heavily in debt due to high-stakes gambling. She's been funneling funds from her trust. Harvey may have discovered this. Alexander's teeth clenched. That means she's desperate. She needs a big payout. Yes, expect her to play dirty. Alexander hung up, glancing toward the children's room. He felt a fierce protectiveness burn in his chest. Felicity's war against them might escalate, and he had to be ready. At midnight, Alexander found himself unable to sleep. Too many swirling thoughts of betrayal, fatherhood, and the legal storm ahead weighed on him. He wandered the mansion's expansive gardens, where trimmed hedges and marble statues stood sentinel under the moonlight. He paused by a centuries-old oak tree, a spot where he once used to read as a teenager. The memory evoked an ache. He wondered if Jonah or Arya might enjoy the same pastime someday. He yearned to show them the orchard, the stables, the horse trails, all the wonders he once took for granted. A rustle caught his attention. He turned sharply and spotted a figure lurking by the stone wall. His pulse quickened, but the figure vanished into the darkness before he could make out features. The faint ring of footsteps on the gravel path faded. Security guards? A prowler? Returning inside, he alerted the manor's head of security, James. After combing the grounds, James reported no sign of an intruder. Still, Alexander couldn't shake the sensation he was being watched, an unsettling reminder that Felicity might stoop to intimidation or worse. He locked the doors, glancing up the staircase toward the children's rooms. Anyone who threatened them would face the full force of his resources. This was his family now. He'd protect them at all costs. The following morning, an unexpected visitor arrived. Margaret, Harvey's longtime personal secretary. She was an older woman, her hair neatly pinned, eyes rimmed with lingering grief. She asked to speak with Alexander and Emily in private. They gathered in the manor's study, sunlight streaming through tall windows. Margaret held a small, leather-bound notebook with trembling hands. I worked for Mr. Caldwell for 30 years, she began, voice quavering. I knew everything he did, and I have a confession. I helped him send away Emily. I helped keep the children a secret. Alexander's stomach churned. Emily's face went pale. Why? Emily whispered. Margaret's eyes brimmed with tears. Because he believed he was protecting you all. Felicity was already manipulating finances, forging documents. Mr. Caldwell suspected she was capable of violence. He asked me to intercept your messages to Alexander to ensure no one found out about the twins until he had a plan to secure them. She placed the notebook on the table. These are Harvey's private notes, proof of Felicity's gambling debts, her dealings with shady figures. He documented everything, wanting to ensure that when the time came, you could protect yourselves in court. I know I can never undo the damage I caused, but I'm trying to do the right thing now." A hush filled the study. Alexander ran a hand over the notebook's worn cover, heart pounding. The final puzzle piece had fallen into place. With Margaret's testimony and the notebook as evidence, Alexander and Emily prepared for Felicity's legal challenge. The court hearing was scheduled a week later in a grand courthouse that had seen its share of sensational trials. Media buzzed around the Caldwell family. Drama reporters camped outside, snapping pictures of the black SUVs that ferried them in. Inside the courtroom, Felicity sat at the defendant's table, flanked by her high-priced attorneys. She wore a defiant expression, refusing to meet Alexander's gaze. Jonah and Aria waited at home with a trusted nanny. Alexander refused to subject them to the trial's spectacle. The judge presiding over the case was stern, known for her no-nonsense approach. Felicity's lawyers argued that Harvey Caldwell was mentally unfit to draft a second will so late in life, claiming undue influence by Emily Donovan. But Martin Garrick countered with medical records showing Harvey's mental clarity, sworn statements by his doctors, and the final blow, Margaret's testimony, plus the notebook containing Felicity's financial crimes. Witness after witness detailed how Felicity had siphoned money, how Harvey had grown concerned and changed his will. Emily testified tearfully about her forced exile, the hidden safe deposit box. Finally, Alexander took the stand, describing how the DNA tests proved paternity and how the second will was entirely in line with the Caldwell tradition of preserving lineage. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the judge delivered the verdict. Her gavel struck once, echoing through the silent chamber. "I find no evidence that the late Harvey Caldwell lacked the capacity to draft this second will, nor is there credible evidence that Miss Donovan wielded undue influence. On the contrary, the record suggests Mr. Caldwell acted to protect his grandchildren. The court upholds the validity of the final testament dated 3 months prior to his passing." Felicity's face crumpled, a storm of rage and desperation crossing her features. Her lawyers immediately requested an appeal, but the judge's expression suggested skepticism. Meanwhile, Alexander closed his eyes, relief washing over him. Emily let out a shaky breath, while Martin Garrick nodded in satisfaction. In the flurry that followed, Felicity's legal team insisted they would fight on, but with the damning evidence of her fraud, any further legal maneuvers seemed doomed. Reporters swarmed them as they exited the courthouse. Alexander shielded Emily from intrusive camera flashes, guiding her into the waiting SUV. Sinking into the seats, they shared a moment of weary victory. Justice had prevailed, but the cost had been steep years of emotional pain, fractured relationships, and the public exposure of family secrets. Still, Alexander's new family was finally acknowledged. That, at least, was worth everything. With the legal battle settled, Emily, Jonah, and Aria moved into Caldwell Manor. At first, it was supposed to be a temporary arrangement while they decided how to merge their two worlds. Days stretched into weeks, and soon the manor buzzed with the children's laughter as they explored corridors, discovered hidden rooms, and chased each other around the gardens. Alexander immersed himself in fatherhood. He accompanied them to register for school, helped Jonah tinker with a new robotics kit, and cheered Aria on as she painted vibrant landscapes in the old art studio. He even set up a small gallery for her in an unused drawing room. Emily watched, eyes brimming with gratitude and a touch of nostalgia. Sometimes old wounds throbbed. They'd argue about the years lost, about the misunderstandings. Yet each argument ended with them acknowledging that the real villain had been the secrets orchestrated by Harvey and the threat from Felicity. Over time, they found a tentative harmony, forging a partnership not just as co-parents, but also as two people rekindling a bond tested by fate. Meanwhile, Felicity vanished from their daily lives. Rumor had it she sold her estate to cover debts. She'd become a pariah, her reputation tarnished by the very revelations she tried to suppress. Amid the chaos, Alexander never forgot the memory of Harvey Caldwell, the grandfather who had shaped him. Though betrayal and secrecy had muddied his legacy, there was also immense gratitude for the old man's misguided attempt at protection. In the end, Harvey had done the right thing, leaving a final testament that secured a better future for his grandchildren. One afternoon, Alexander decided to take the twins to Harvey's favorite vineyard in Bordeaux, which was part of their new inheritance. Emily accompanied them, and the children ran through rows of grapevines, laughing under the French sun. It was a journey that felt like a coming full circle, where old traditions met new beginnings. Later, in the cellar, they discovered a final letter addressed to Alexander. Tucked inside an oak barrel, Harvey had specifically labeled. In neat handwriting, Harvey apologized for his methods, but reiterated his love. "You have a heart bigger than all your wealth, my boy," he wrote. "I only wanted to keep you from harm. Forgive me." Alexander's eyes misted. The letter reminded him of how life's complexities sometimes drove people to extreme measures. He resolved to learn from Harvey's mistakes. He would not allow fear or secrecy to guide him. He'd protect his family openly, with love and honesty. Months passed, each day weaving stronger bonds within the new Caldwell family. The twins settled into their school routine, quickly making friends. Alexander and Emily discovered that despite their painful history, they still had a gentle spark between them. They navigated daily life together, helping with homework, planning weekend trips, dealing with occasional sibling rivalry. Business-wise, Alexander stayed busy at Caldwell Industries, but he found himself delegating more, carving out time for family dinners and bedtime stories. The board of directors welcomed Emily's perspective, especially on philanthropy and community outreach, a role she had excelled in during her earlier days as the golden couple with Alexander. The media eventually shifted to newer scandals, though tabloids occasionally spun lurid headlines about the Caldwell saga. Still, their immediate circle of friends and colleagues largely supported them, admiring how they'd triumphed over adversity. Even high-profile figures like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, both of whom Alexander had once met at philanthropic events, privately congratulated him on forging a stable family life. It validated Alexander's belief that there was more to success than just financial power. On a cool autumn evening, after tucking the twins into bed, Alexander found Emily in the manor's old conservatory. The scent of night-blooming jasmine filled the air, and as he approached, he realized a profound shift had occurred. They were no longer fractured halves, but a family, ready to face whatever came next. Under the conservatory's glass dome, stars shimmered overhead. The subtle glow of moonlight illuminated Emily's features as she stood among the exotic plants. Alexander approached quietly, heart thumping in his chest. The hush enveloped them, as if the entire universe momentarily paused. He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "We've been through a storm, maybe several, but I see a future with you and the kids." Emily's gaze softened, tears forming at the corners. "After everything, are you sure you want me in your life again? As more than just the mother of your children?" Alexander cupped her cheek gently. "I never stopped loving you. We both have regrets, but I believe we can move forward." She leaned into his touch, releasing a shaky breath that held years of tension. "I'd like that. I want us to be a family in every sense." The moment felt both tender and electric. He tilted her chin up and kissed her softly, reverently. The years of separation, misunderstanding, and grief melted away in that singular moment, replaced by hope and unspoken promise. In the background, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. The Caldwell manor, once silent and hollow, now resonated with the promise of new beginnings. Harvey's secrets had finally unraveled, and in their place emerged a bond stronger than ever. And so the curtain falls on this turbulent saga of love, betrayal, and redemption. Alexander Caldwell, once a lone billionaire, now stands enriched beyond measure, his greatest treasure being the family he'd never known he had. Emily's resilience, the twins' innocence, and a grandfather's paradoxical final gesture all converged to forge a future built on truth. What began as the somber farewell at Harvey Caldwell's funeral transformed into a revelation of hidden children, a covert will, and a family's resurrection from the ashes of secrecy. Despite the dark machinations, attempted betrayals, and a courtroom showdown that nearly tore them apart, hope prevailed. If you found this real-life drama as captivating as we did, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories of hidden legacies and heart-stopping twists. Your support helps us continue bringing you tales of life's most extraordinary moments. Thank you for watching.